Yes, perfect. Okay, I think we are ready to start because I have lots of content and we don't have enough time for everything. So, the earlier we start, more information we're gonna get. So we'll talk about augmented reality and mobile and how they can be combined together, work together, and benefit from one another. So before we move to the content, let me thank our sponsors. They are amazing. This event wouldn't be available and without those amazing companies. Also, I want to thank organizers, everyone thanks sponsors, but organizers spend their time and put a lot of effort in order to make this event possible. So now, for everyone who doesn't know me, my name is Veronika KOLESNIKOVA. Here I put my avatar, so you can see that online, that that's me. I think looks pretty close to real me. I am twice Microsoft MVP in AI. I just got my second award probably a month or so ago. So that is super exciting. I have a master's degree in information technology. I started my career as a quality engineer initially, and then I moved to development. So now I have probably around 7 years of development experience. Most of the time, I am working with Microsoft technologies like C#, .NET, Xamarin. I love machine learning tools provided by Microsoft. I love cognitive services, all AR tools. I'm interested in all those emerging technologies like machine learning, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality, and so that's all what I love. Recently, I started learning more about Node.js and other JavaScript frameworks, check what AWS has in store, and I just love learning different things. So it's really cool that we as developers have so many opportunities to learn. And my hobbies are dancing, traveling, and aerial yoga. So if you have any questions about my hobbies, we can talk after the session. But if you have any questions around the content of the session, definitely put your questions in the chat. Or after I finish my presentation, I can definitely make you a presenter, and so you can ask your questions live. So here's the agenda for next probably 45 to 50 minutes. I'll try to kind of wrap it up, but quickly, but at the same time, not overwhelm you. This I'll try. If it gets overwhelming at some point, really let me know. We'll slow it down. But I just have lots of content, and I can talk about AR and VR and mobile for hours and hours. We'll start with basics of virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. And then I'll talk a little bit about offerings of AR and VR tools on web. We'll talk about ARKit. We'll talk about ARKit for iOS and ARCORE for Android. Mixed reality in Power Apps, that is something brand new and super exciting. And then I'll tell you about Azure Spatial Anchors, and I will show you a demo in the end. So you can see how those Azure Spatial Anchors are working with Xamarin, and how you can use C# code and utilize Microsoft offerings to combine mobile and AR. Okay, so AR, VR, MR. So many R's, so many realities. Just several years ago, we had only one real reality. Now we have a lot of different ones. So we need to figure out what is what and what's the difference between them. And I'll start with virtual reality. And virtual reality, it is always used um, through, not only used, but it's also accessed through specific hardware. So we have those goggles, you can see it on the picture, and some joysticks that you can manipulate objects inside that virtual reality. So you are kind of entering, let's call it parallel world, but it is actually a three-dimensional computer-generated environment. You are all there, so you don't see any objects from real world. You can interact with objects inside that virtual world only using those hardware devices and joysticks, and you, because you don't see what's going on around you, there are some limitations around virtual reality, but there are so many opportunities to use virtual reality. Mostly developers create applications for gaming industry, but there are also lots of learning opportunities, lots of different experiences. I know I had a chance to use it in a museum. It was part of the exhibition, so they gave us those VR headsets, and it was really cool experience. Definitely added to my perspective and the view of the art in the museum. Next one here is augmented reality. And augmented reality, it is kind of mix of our real world and those virtual objects that kind of appear in that real world through a lens of, for example, mobile device, as you can see on the picture here. Was super popular a couple of years ago. It is still popular somewhere. I just don't hear a lot about it anymore, but I know people still use it and play with it. So that is a great example of augmented reality. You have those virtual objects inside real world, and you can interact with them through the screen of that device. There are several options there how you can create that augmented reality. We have marker-based augmented reality, so you're basically creating a marker somewhere, place it in real world. For example, you have a table, put it on the table, and it might be an object, it might be a picture, it might be a QR code. So when you are using your application and you are kind of going through environment and you see that specific marker, whether it's an object or QR code, when your augmented reality application sees that marker, it understands, okay, so here we have that virtual object, and virtual object appears on top of that marker, or in some cases, it can just replace that marker with that virtual 3D object. Actually, it doesn't have to be 3D. Sometimes people use 2D objects in augmented reality. Next one here is markerless augmented reality, and you probably guessed that markerless means you don't have a marker, but you have other options how you can actually place specific virtual object in our real world. You can use, for example, GPS. So if your user accessing your augmented reality application in that specific place, they just probably open the camera and scan around that, they will see that specific object in that specific place, and they will be able to interact with it or get some information from that object. Or sometimes it's based on the location, so it doesn't matter. It's not based on GPS signal. It's based on other objects around you, or it might be based on other signals like Wi-Fi signal or Bluetooth signal. So there are lots and lots of options to create markerless augmented reality if you don't want to place a marker for some reason. And sometimes it's really hard to place a marker if it's somewhere in the city where everyone is just walking by and you can just leave your QR code there. It will be, it's not possible in lots of cases. And next one here is projection-based augmented reality, and that means that you are projecting those virtual objects on top of real-world objects. Every time when I talk about it, I actually remember those kind of games for kids in malls. I'm not sure if it's everywhere, but I saw it a couple of times in the mall here. They project little fish, and then kids usually run around and play with fish, and that fish, it just kind of flies away from the kids, so it's super fun. And that's projection-based augmented reality. And the last option here is superimposition-based augmented reality. It is kind of similar to marker-based, but it is different. So it can replace real objects with virtual objects. For example, if you use IKEA application, they have that option. So you are scanning the room, you are getting a piece of real furniture. Maybe it's a couch, and then that couch actually transfers to and becomes that virtual couch that you can drag and drop around your virtual room, or you drag and drop it on the screen, so you can see how it's going to fit in your room. So that's superimposition. In most of cases, it replaces the whole object with the virtual object, but sometimes you can just replace a little piece of it. It depends what you're trying to achieve in your augmented reality application. Okay, and now we have mixed reality. Mixed reality actually has so many different definitions. Sometimes it's really confusing, because if you ask one group of people, they say, okay, mixed reality, it is the whole, the whole line. Like mixed reality basically covers everything from real world to virtual environment. And here you can see it on the screen. Have that whole line that kind of combines all those realities, and mixed reality is on top of everything, covers all the realities. But in general, mixed reality kind of similar to augmented reality, but with augmented reality, you need to interact through device. So if you are using your phone for augmented reality, you are interacting with those virtual objects through your phone. In mixed reality, you can actually see those virtual objects and then interact with them just using your hand gestures. You don't need any additional devices to interact with those objects. You basically need just, for example, a headset. And here you can see that is me just a couple of years ago. It is actually HoloLens. Was it one? yeah, it's HoloLens previous version. I think now they have HoloLens 2. That is, I think, HoloLens 1. So you can see it was a little bigger, but still worked great. So we were presenting at University of Massachusetts Medical School. We were showcasing our mixed reality application for students, and I was showing it, and you can see on the screen what I saw. So that's pretty cool, and I'm glad that Microsoft keeps improving the headset, because at that time it was kind of heavy, kind of bulky, sometimes slow. Now they are doing a really great job with their new headsets, so definitely check it out. But Microsoft is not the only company that offers those headsets, so there are lots and lots of opportunities to check mixed reality and actually start developing for mixed reality, even without the headsets, because there are lots of emulators and it's a good start. So usually those headsets, they are super expensive, but if you just want to try it for a little bit or figure out if you like it or not, you can use them online emulators, develop for an emulator, and then if you like it and you sure you want to invest that much money, then go ahead and purchase headset. They're super cool. Okay, let's talk about AR in different environments. So we'll start with web, and we have several options here. I really like augmented reality and virtual reality on the web, because that is really accessible for anyone. People don't have to buy latest smartphones, latest Androids and iPhones. They don't have to buy specific devices, hardware that might be expensive, but they can just use their browsers, and I think pretty much all browsers can support the VR and AR technologies. So in most of cases, you are not going to have any barrier to enter that area of AR and VR development. And so first tool here is WebGL. And WebGL is a JavaScript API for rendering interactive 3D and 2D objects. You can integrate WebGL. And now actually the WebGL becomes like a standard that people are using, developers are using for augmented and virtual reality development on the web. So you're basically using HTML and WebGL in order to put those virtual reality objects inside Canvas in HTML, and then those objects can be interacted with. There are 3D objects. You can use them on mobile devices. You can use them on desktops. So as long as your browser is supporting WebGL, then you don't have any problems of using those applications that you created with WebGL. Next one here is an A-frame. A-frame is actually built on top of WebGL. So A-frame is a JS library. You just need to add it to your web page, to your HTML, and then you have an option to add ascene, that specific tag that kind of lets your page understand that, okay, now we're going to use those virtual objects, in virtual environments. And both WebGL and A-Frame, they support the physics of objects. You can that is really important to understand the physics of objects, because if you just drop random 3D objects here and there and they don't look real, then your users will be confused, and they will have hard time kind of believing your application. And that is really important for your users to believe that that's the environment and they're interacting with real objects. Of course, the virtual, they're not real, but when they are playing inside a game or interacting with some kind of objects, they should look real. You don't need any specific plugins to use WebGL and A-Frame. It's just your browser. And next one here, we have ARJS. That one is specifically for AR. It's JavaScript framework. So if you know JavaScript, it won't be really hard for you to start developing using ARJS. You're just adding it to your web page. And then ARJS is mostly used with markers. So you are creating marker-based augmented reality applications. They have special portal where you can create that marker, you can assign a virtual object to that marker, and then using ARJS, you're actually interacting and recognizing that object. I think just recently they added location-based virtual objects. So it's based on your location. They will show those virtual objects. Okay, and next here is ARCORE on the web, or now they call it WebXR. Google, with partnership with Mozilla, they actually released WebXR. So Microsoft Edge, the latest browser that is Chromium based, and also Chrome version 79 and up, they all support WebXR. Unfortunately, I haven't heard a lot about WebXR. They don't really advertise it that much, and I don't know why, because they released it I think 2 years ago. So that should be huge, and especially when browsers already supporting that, I think that should be cool for developers to use that technology. So if you heard anything about WebXR or you used it, definitely let me know. I'm really interested in that. I haven't used it myself. Okay, now let's move to ARKIT for iOS. And you know, Apple, they're really restrictive. So you need to have specific devices in order to work with ARKit. You need to be, if you're a developer, you need to be mindful of what your users are going to use. If it's iPad or iPhone, what version, what kind of system they have, do they update it often, do they not update it often. So there are lots of tricky parts. I feel like it's like everything with Apple, you need to be really mindful about their hardware, and so it actually works with the software. But in general, it recognizes real-world objects. If you have iPhone, you probably had a chance to use that measurement application. I use it a lot because I don't have a measuring tape in my house, so I'm using that measurement app all the time. I'm actually not sure how accurate it is, but that's how my world works at home. So it can recognize the objects, it can measure those objects. Actually, the main aim is to keep track of those objects, and when they disappear from environment. And by disappearing, I mean if you just move your camera away, or you are too far from an object, or it gets just too dark and your camera can't recognize that object, then it kind of disappears and ARKit stops recognizing it. Now they have ARKit 4, and they have lots of new features there, and here I put just some of them. They have depth API, so now when you measure in, you not only can measure, and I'm not talking about that specific measurement application, but when you use ARKit and part of your application needs to measure something or realize how objects are related to each other, if one is closer to you and one is farther down, that is possible now using the API. So be mindful about that. Again, it's not for all devices. That is pretty much for just latest devices and latest hardware because of how the camera works in iOS devices. Next one is location anchors. So you can put different anchors based on location using maps and using GPS. And those anchors can be virtual objects. It can contain some useful information. For example, if you are creating a virtual excursion, you can put different anchors in different places, and then your users will use the application and can scan environment and learn a little more about objects there. And then next one is face tracking support. If you have iOS devices, I have iPhone, you probably saw those memojis where you can just make some faces and then memojis kind of mimic what you are doing. So that is face tracking support. Next one here is ARCORE for Android. And ARCORE is more open, so it's not only for Android devices, it supports Java, it has different SDKs, Java, Unity, Unreal Engine, and iOS. And now they have that ARCORE on the web that they call WebXR. So definitely pay attention to that. ARCORE can be used cross-platform. So ARCORE uses 3 key capabilities to integrate virtual content with real world. Motion tracking, environment understanding, and light estimation. So usually when you start your ARCORE application, you first need to scan the environment. So ARCORE kind of understands what objects you have there, what is real world around you. And then based on that information, you can actually place some kind of 3D objects there or interact with different virtual objects. And then light estimation, that is really important. You need to make sure that you have good light. And out of the box, ARCORE actually notify you. Okay, we don't have enough light here. Maybe you should turn on the light or change your environment. Just, I don't know, go outside. So it is important to have good light because if it's a dark room, then it can't recognize objects. If it can recognize the objects, it can effectively scan the environment. Okay, now something really, really brand new, and it is mixed reality in Power Apps. I think they are still on preview. At least some parts of mixed reality in Power Apps are on preview. Definitely check it out, especially if you have access to Power Platform, Microsoft Power Platform, definitely check it out. You don't have to be a developer to use those Power Apps, and it is really cool. Mixed reality becomes more accessible for people who are not developers, who are not writing code, or maybe just developers who don't want to write code for a mixed reality application. So it's completely drag and drop option there. You have an option to place 3D models or virtual volumetric representations. It can be 3D models or 2D models. It's really hard to get 3D models. So if you do augmented reality or virtual reality applications, it is really, really hard to find 3D models, especially with good quality, or 3D models of your custom objects. So sometimes you have to use 2D objects, and then you can still interact with them. You can make measurements using mixed reality. You can interact with those 3D objects. So for example, you can see here on the picture, you can see that you can kind of get that 3D object and see if it fits in your room, or if there is a gap, it fits in that gap. You can also interact with those objects, like turn them around, see what's going on, enlarge them, make them smaller. So lots of options there. And I am 100% sure that that geospatial component is still on preview. So check it out. It works pretty good. I checked it. I created a Power App using mixed reality. It is pretty easy to understand how you can drag and drop different objects and create those Power Apps. And those apps are going to be cross-platform, so you can use them with iOS and Android. So that is super cool. Definitely check it out if you have an opportunity. And the last one here, but I think that's the main thing why we're here, because the demo actually is going to cover Azure Spatial Anchors. They were released last year during build. So they are available on Azure. That is really cool. I think that is the first Azure offering for augmented reality. And that is definitely for developers. So you need to have access to Azure. You have all the benefits of that's Azure, meaning you have access to logs, you have access to the support, and you can easily integrate that service, that resource, with other resources available on Azure. You can place and connect digital content to physical points of interest. So you can use GPS, or you can just scan your environment and kind of understand what objects are around you, and then based on that information, place that virtual object inside that environment, and then you can interact with the object. And it can provide multi-device experience. So if you, as a developer, or if you created an application where you allow your users to actually place that virtual object somewhere, that virtual object is going to stay there. So no matter how many different devices are around this object, they will all see it. Some people, they can use the HoloLens, so you can see it on this image. Others can be on their mobile devices, and it doesn't matter if it's iOS devices or Android devices, they will all see same virtual 3D objects, and that is pretty cool. They can all interact with them. There is a little trick there, is it is really hard to store those objects for extended period of time. basically, you need to create a separate storage account or some kind of API, so you can store information about those spatial anchors. They are not automatically stored for extended period of time inside the spatial anchors resource. So you need to work around that issue if you want to actually store those anchors for extended period of time. You can combine spatial anchors with machine learning capabilities. You can use cognitive services, so it will be amazing. You can analyze objects and at the same time create your virtual objects in your real environment and interact with those objects. Another feature here is wayfinding. So you can basically drop several spatial anchors and then they can direct your users between them. So you can assign numbers. Okay, this is the first one, this is the second one, and your user will be directed from the first anchor to the second one, and so on and so forth. And a feature that I already kind of mentioned, it is creating persistent spatial anchors. So it is tricky, but it is possible, and it still stores them, but just for a short period of time. But you can use databases, you can use APIs, you can use other Azure tools in order to actually store that information for longer. And now let's move to the demo. Please let me know if you have any questions. I hope it's all clear and you just don't have any questions. But if you do, definitely let me know at any point. So we'll go to Azure portal first. Let me actually move it here. Okay. So what we have here is a bunch of stuff that is created separately, actually. So I have a bunch of demos here, but the thing that we are interested in is that spatial anchors account and how you can create it. You just go to create a resource. There are always several ways of doing things in Azure, but I usually just go and create a resource. You are typing anchors, okay. And what I really like is the documentation. Microsoft actually has amazing documentation, lots of examples online. They have code on GitHub. It's all open source, so you can definitely get it and check it out, how it works. Separate for Android or iOS or with Xamarin. So Xamarin, you can use Xamarin Forms and create cross-platform experience. So your one app will be used in different platforms. Or you can specifically use Xamarin and use C# specifically to create application for Android or iOS. And here we just created that spatial anchors resource. They have some screenshots here and information about available plans. So you're basically adding resource name, your subscription, adding it to resource group. Another kind of maybe downside for some people, because it is not available everywhere. Unfortunately, it is just available in several regions around the world. But just if your region is not available there, try to find a region that is closer to you. But they are trying to definitely expand that service and make it available in more regions. So when you are creating that, back to resource groups, I don't want to waste the time and create the resource. Usually takes some time to actually create it. So we'll go and see what actually is happening there. So it basically creates that one spatial anchors account. And you can see important things here. I mean, everything is important, but the most important things there are those monitoring logs, so you can see if actually your host reached the resource. That is really, really important to know, especially when you're testing it, when you're trying to figure out if it works, if it doesn't work, if it reached the resource or not, if actually something is happening or not. That is definitely a good way to understand what just happened. And then you have account domain here. That's what you need to remember. And account ID, and then the access keys. There are two keys. I'm not going to show it to you. I mean, I can show it to you because I'm going to delete the resource anyways, but they're just two keys. You don't need both of them. One is kind of a backup, and then you can still use. So they're both active, but usually you just need one key. And then, as you probably noticed, I have a bunch of other stuff here. So I have storage account, I have app service. I actually have one as a backup app service, but like one main app service. So that is for storing those spatial anchors. So if you want to store them for longer, then definitely you need storage account. You need to create a database, or there are other ways to create API and store them somewhere else. But yeah, just be mindful about that. And here we have the code. So I'm going to show you the main activity screen, and then you'll later actually see how it all works. That is pretty basic layout. We have an option to create anchor and then locate the anchor. When you created an anchor, it actually gives you anchor ID. And then when you are locating that anchor, you are entering that ID, and then you can locate that anchor by ID. And then another screen here, and that one is really important. Oh, actually, yeah, I forgot to mention that that is a Xamarin application. It is Xamarin Android, so it is specifically for Android. You can create separate Android and iOS applications, or you can use Xamarin Forms and create just one cross-platform solution. If you are not a fan of Xamarin and C#, but you want to use Azure Spatial Anchors, then you can use them with Java for Android and Swift for iOS. But if you are using it with Xamarin, and I actually love Xamarin because I can just still use C# and create amazing mobile applications. And I'm glad that Azure Spatial Anchors are supported by Xamarin. So here we can see that we are basically placing a fragment, and fragment is an scene form, and it comes from Google AR. So it's actually an ARCORE. behind the scene, because when we are using Android devices, we are using ARCORE in most of cases to actually scan the environment and to interact with those virtual objects. So that's what happened in there. And then we have create activity, and you can see here that it asks you to scan the environment, so you are scanning, and it will show you the progress when the scanning is finished, and it is pretty confident about your real environment around you. Then it lets you place your anchor. You can technically place it earlier before you finish scanning, but then it actually might create some issues later if if you haven't finished the scanning of the environment and you place the objects, that it might not save it, or the location might be gone later. So make sure that it's working properly. And then you are actually creating here your virtual object. We are getting a fragment there, and information from that fragment. So and then based on that information from the fragment from ARCORE, we are creating the scene and then placing that virtual object inside that scene. And here we can set up color, different shapes. We can place custom 3D objects there. So there are lots of different options. And usually I am showing pretty basic and easy demos that show you simple ways of doing things. I think nothing is really simple about augmented reality and virtual reality. You need to be mindful about some physics, how 3D objects are working, how you can interact with them. You need to be mindful about specifics of devices. You need to be mindful about those 3D objects themselves, where they're coming from, how they're going to be displayed on the screen. So many different things, but when you do once or twice, it's kind of hard because you need to remember a lot of things. But when you actually start working with augmented reality on a regular basis, when you created 3, 4, 5 applications, and it becomes really easy, and you actually create more and more effective applications that look more and more real and more user-friendly. So that is for creation. There are some errors going on here. So if you didn't provide your account ID for spatial anchors, or the key, or you didn't provide the link, then it will return an error, because you need to make sure when you're using those spatial anchors, you are providing account details there. And you can see here that I have domain here, and account key and account ID. So that is really important to have in your settings. And so yeah, that is for creation. Then we also have that locate activity. And there we have, so that is the locate. So basically your user enters a number, actually that's an ID of your virtual object, and then click locate. You scan the environment, and then it will locate that specific object. So if you have several virtual objects in that environment, but you want to locate just one, that is really useful to locate it by ID. Okay, so we are locating it. Same thing, we need to scan the environment, and it will try to find the anchor by that ID that your user specified. And actually, I want to move up and show you what libraries I used here, because that is very important. I used ARCORE, ARCORE scene form, the rendering, the UX here, and then that specific one, Microsoft Azure Spatial Anchors. That is the library that can help you to work with those spatial anchors that you created. And now let me show you how that actually works. Unfortunately, due to the virtual nature of this conference, it's a little hard to show those augmented reality demos and how they all work. So I'm not gonna show it to you real time. I'm gonna show you a video from my presentation last year at Visual Studio Live conference at the Microsoft headquarters. So you'll see how that application that I showed you the code for is actually working. Here I have two buttons, create and locate. Obviously, the first one will help you to create an Azure Spatial Anchor, and the second one will help you to locate. And there are basically two screens for that. And let's start with create. I hope you can see what's going on. So you can see some little dots, and that is not something that I specifically created. That is part of built-in functionality in ARCORE. So it scans the environment. The thing that I mentioned to you, when you use ARCORE or ARKit, you are scanning the environment to kind of set up in. Then I have some, I don't think you can see it here. Yeah, so there is, can you see? No, it's too dark. So there is a message up on top, so you can track the scanning process, and it says scan progress is 100%. So when you scan in, it kind of shows you the percentage. If you have less than 100%, then you can still place a spatial anchor, but it won't be able to save it because you don't have enough information about the environment. But once you have 100, you can place an object, and now it's a sphere. It has a message on top says ready to save. So you're just going around the object, scan it. So it has enough data to save it. And then there was a message that it was saved with ID 0. So we saved it. We can place another one. Place another one somewhere else. Here, for example, we're scanning that one, collecting information about the environment, and passing it when it's ready, when it has enough details, it passes it to Azure. And it all depends on the lighting. So if the light is not that good, it will take some time to actually save it. Or it might not actually save it at all. I think that is
too far. I don't have enough, not long enough cable for that. Just getting that one. I'm pretty sure it's saved. So if not, we'll see it. That's it. We saved them. We'll forget about them. Now they are in Azure Spatial Anchors, in Azure Spatial Anchors resource stored on Azure. When then we're doing locate, and yeah, we found it. So that was just by default. When you open that screen, it finds the last one. There is also a button to locate, so you can put a number of your anchor and press locate, and it will try to find that anchor in your environment. So that's the demo, and then you can obviously color it differently. You can set up different 3D objects. I'm using Sphere just to show you how it works. Sphere is pretty much the easiest thing to set up there. Sphere and a cube. You can create your custom 3D models and also use them. You're also able to store some data with the anchor. So when users find that anchor, and they don't have to have specific device. I wrote for Android. If you wrote it with Xamarin Forms.
So that's how it works. And I can guarantee it's still working like that since the conference. I just really liked the video, and it actually showed in details what's happening, how this application works. So I think it was a good addition and good replacement for real-time demo, because otherwise it's really hard to show it virtually. But I hope you trust me that it actually works. I use real, that demo, I used Pixel XL. So, okay, I'm glad you like it. So let me know if you have any questions. We still have a couple of minutes left, and I'll be happy to answer the questions. I'm glad you like it. And if you have any questions later, when you try Azure Spatial Anchors yourself, or any other tools that I mentioned, if you want to integrate with mobile devices or web, definitely let me know. I'll be happy to chat about it. I'll be happy to answer questions later on. Okay, no, you can ask real questions. You can ask any questions, and no judgment zone. Great. I'm happy you like it. Yeah, definitely reach out to me on social media. I am really active on Twitter. You can just send me a DM. I'll be happy to talk to you. You can find me on LinkedIn. I am Veronika KOLESNIKOVA. I'm here in Boston, Massachusetts. And just when you follow me on LinkedIn, definitely let me know why you want to connect, and how you know me. 'Cause sometimes it's confusing. Then people just start adding me, and I don't know them, and I don't want to be rude. Yeah, it can be a problem. So definitely let me know. Yeah, thank you. Okay, I guess we are at 3:45. Eastern Standard Time. So thank you so much for attending my session. I hope you enjoyed it. Have an amazing rest of your conference. Thanks to organizers and sponsors, and it was just a great experience for me too. So thank you so much.